Welcome to Season 3, Episode 12 of CSS Breakdown, book by book. In this deep dive, we're cracking open a fascinating chapter from Michael Kimmel's The Gendered Society, where we'll examine how gender lives in and on our bodies, shaping how we look, feel, desire, and care for ourselves and others. It's easy to think of our bodies as just ours or private property, maybe, or perhaps just a collection of uncontrollable biological impulses. We might even think our sexuality is this deeply personal thing we never really talk about.
Right.
But what Kimmel unpacks here is how profoundly social and cultural forces, well, they inscribe themselves onto our very physical being. Our bodies become these incredible social texts, constantly being written on and read by others.
Exactly. And this challenges that initial perception right away. He asserts that nothing could be more gendered in these most individual private experiences.
Yeah, that hits hard right from the start.
What's truly striking here is how Kimmel reveals that even our most private experiences, like, our sexuality, are actually intimate expressions of deeply established social norms. And things have changed significantly in recent decades. New surgical procedures, the internet.
Huge changes.
They've profoundly transformed this system of gendered signifying, making us more aware of our bodies than ever before. This leads to new forms of embodied agency, which is great. But quite predictably, it's also met with backlash.
Always the backlash.
So our mission today is to explore these layers, maybe review some surprising facts, and help you understand the profound ways gender shapes your physical self.
So let's start right there with this core idea, the gendered body. It's a fundamental challenge to how we often see ourselves, isn't it?
Absolutely.
We tend to view our bodies as either completely under our control, like private property, or maybe entirely driven by biology we can't control. But Kimmel pushes back immediately.
He says that thinking is incomplete.
Right. His assertion that nothing could be more gendered than these most individual, private experiences really sets the stage. It shifts our understanding from just biology or individualism to something deeply sociological.
And what that highlights is how societal expectations and cultural contexts don't just influence, they pretty much dictate how we perceive, present, and even, experience our physical self.
Dictate is a strong word, but yeah.
Think about it. Our bodies are constantly being read by others. They communicate volumes about gender even before we open our mouths.
Yeah, like the clothes we pick, our posture.
Exactly. Those everyday signals, they're not random acts. They're part of this larger communication system that's just deeply intertwined with gender.
And it makes you wonder, as we get more control over modifying our bodies with biotechnology and things like that, what new gendered expectations might pop up.
Will technology speed this up or rewrite the script entirely?
Yeah.
It's a critical question. Kimmel really drives home this powerful metaphor of our bodies as social texts, consciously constructed to be read by others.
That metaphor is really sticky.
It pushes us to recognize the performative aspect of gender. We aren't simply born with a body. We actively shape it, present it, sometimes even transform it in ways that either align with or challenge gender norms.
And there's always an audience implied.
Always.
Yeah.
People doing the reading.
That really underscores the performative aspect, doesn't it? It makes you think how much of our everyday presentation is really us versus like a conscious or subconscious performance.
It's a blurry line.
Oh, and Kimmel points out that modern changes, new surgeries, birth control, the internet, they've transformed this system of gendered signifying.
Right. These technological and societal shifts they've profoundly amplified our awareness of our bodies. They offer new possibilities for self-expression, a kind of embodied democracy, you could say, where people have more agency.
More control, yeah.
But as Kimmel predictably notes, these shifts have also been met with increased backlash against anyone who challenges those traditional norms.
So this foundational understanding of the gendered body, it's crucial as we dive deeper, right? Starting with something as huge as our ideals of beauty.
Exactly. So what stands out to you, the listener, about this initial framing of the body as a social text?
Okay, let's unpack this beauty thing. Our ideals of beauty, attractiveness. They're not universal, not timeless. They are, as Kimmel clearly states, deeply gendered.
Absolutely not universal.
And here's where it gets really interesting for me, because for centuries, it was pretty much men setting those standards for women. And men's own value often came from other things like wealth or power.
Indeed. And when we look at female beauty standards, it's clear they're not just about aesthetics. They're deeply tangled up with socioeconomic structures, with power dynamics.
Right.
The cultural relativity of beauty is striking. Like in societies where women have higher status, smaller breasts are often preferred. Maybe because it minimizes anatomical differences, makes women seem less distinct from men, or helps with movement.
And conversely, Kimmel notes that in the U.S., preferences for breast size, even hemlines, they fluctuate with the economy.
That's wild.
Yeah. When male breadwinners are dominant, maybe you see bigger breasts, shorter hemlines, exaggerating differences. But in downturns, hemlines drop, smaller breasts are more the norm, maybe as women enter the workforce, minimizing those differences.
It's this almost subconscious link between the economy and, well, bodies.
Mhm.
And beyond economics, think about different cultural views. In some tropical cultures, breasts aren't even the main focus of sexual attraction.
Interesting.
And in certain Islamic cultures, the belief in women's powerful allure, combined with the idea men can't control themselves, leads to practices like purdah, covering the body. Just shows how specific and ingrained these standards are.
Which brings us straight to Naomi Wolf and her concept of the beauty myth. Kimmel explains it as this unreachable cultural ideal of feminine beauty that uses images of female beauty as a political weapon against women's advancement.
That's a powerful claim.
It is. Wolf compares it to Weber's iron cage of consumption, but for women, she calls it an iron maiden, trapping them in this relentless cycle. Cosmetics, beauty aids, diets, obsessive exercise.
Constant pressure.
Yeah. She says it turns women's bodies into prisons their homes no longer were.
Wow. And that leads to Kimmel's question.
Hmm.
Is this tyranny of slenderness maybe an ironic result of women gaining independence, like a backlash to keep them focused on their bodies just as they're breaking free?
He mentions the timing of the first Miss America pageant in 1920, the same year women got the vote. Probably a coincidence, he says, but
But still a striking parallel, right? Whether intentional or not.
definitely. And the obsession, especially for women, with weight and breast size is just pervasive. Iris Young calls breasts the most visible signs of a woman's femininity.
And Kimmel talks about the Goldilocks dilemma.
Right. Too large or too small, never just right. And the stats on surgeries, like breast augmentations and reductions, are huge. Hundreds of thousands in just 1 year back in 2001.
And the weight aspect is dramatic too.
Yeah.
The ideal has become so unattainable, pushing women towards thinness and buxomness at the same time.
It's contradictory.
Totally.
Yeah.
Fashion models today weigh significantly less than the average American woman. Think about it. Marilyn Monroe, a huge sex symbol, wore a size 12. Today's symbols, often a size 4.
It creates this impossible visual gap. It's no wonder so many women are striving for something that's physically demanding and, well, often doesn't even make sense physiologically.
And this impossible ideal, this tyranny of slenderness, it contributes to really serious problems like anorexia nervosa and bulimia.
Yeah, dangerous conditions.
Anorexia involves chronic starvation, obsessive exercise, bulimia is binging and purging. And while they're extreme, Kimmel points out they're just the far end of a spectrum of body preoccupation that includes things we might see as more normal, like compulsive dieting or exercise.
The rates in the U.S. are shocking. Millions affected. Anorexia is a leading chronic illness for adolescents.
And you contrast that with other cultures where plumpness might be valued or where rates are way lower. Historically, it was more common among white middle-class girls here, but we're seeing increases elsewhere now. Young Japanese women, black adolescent girls.
Why do you think that is?
Well, Kimmel suggests links to media depictions, maybe even this perverse idea of assimilation into dominant cultural ideals. It's complex.
Now, the focus has often been on women, but men haven't escaped this. They've become increasingly concerned with their bodies, too. Fitness, weight.
Though men have always valued strength,
Yeah.
right? Charles Atlas and all that.
True. But this intense preoccupation with building muscles, Kimmel notes, paradoxically increases when men are least likely to need that physical strength for work.
That's fascinating. It's like we recreate in appearance what we don't need in reality anymore.
Exactly. And Kimmel highlights the huge success of magazines like Men's Health, encouraging men to see their bodies as ongoing projects, kind of mirroring the female experience.
Yeah. Men's anxieties mirror women's, just with a different focus. Women, breast size, weight, men, muscularity. Both are exaggerating biological differences. It makes you wonder if, as genders become more equal publicly, beauty standards double down on those biological distinctions.
This drive for extreme muscularity leads to things like muscle dysmorphia, thinking you're too small, and the Adonis complex, this compulsion to look like a Greek god.
Perfect chin, thick hair, rippling muscles.
Right. And the media packaging of men's bodies, displayed like women's were a generation ago, plus maybe economic anxiety, It all fuels this shift. Men feel less control economically, so they focus on their appearance, something they can control.
The examples are pretty stark. Remember the G.I. Joe proportions Kimmel
Yeah,
cites?
the 2002 version. A 5'10" man with a 28 waist, 50 chest chest, 22 biceps.
Pope called it a circus freak, not a role model.
Exactly. So it's no surprise nearly half of men report body image disturbance, a huge jump in dissatisfaction over recent decades. That quote from the college student is haunting.
When I look in the mirror, I see two things. What I want to be and what I'm not. I want what men's health pushes. It's painful.
And this impossible ideal means over 1 million men suffer from eating disorders. But they're less likely to get help, right? Thinking it's a woman's illness.
Yeah, stigma is huge. It's prevalent among gay men, male athletes, and steroid use is just mushroomed, especially among college guys.
Right, it builds muscle fast, but the side effects. Mood swings, rage, testicular shrinkage.
So, connecting this back, women's eating disorders, men's muscle dysmorphia, they're parallel tracks, right? Extreme points on this continuum of body preoccupation.
Kimmel calls them overconformist gender norms.
Exactly. Norms most of us are subject to. Most women, he suggests, have a somewhat problematic relationship with food. Most young men have a problematic relationship with violence, and strength signifies that capacity.
Anorexics talk about being fat, bodybuilders about being small.
Both striving for these idealized gender states. And it creates this growing divide, the embodied haves and have-nots, reflecting class, race, and these deep gendered cultures.
So, beyond just pursuing an ideal, many of us actively change our bodies, often permanently. Let's look at how even something like a tattoo, or something drastic like surgery, becomes a canvas for gender.
Yeah, historically, permanent body mods beyond ear piercing were for outgroups, right? Motorcycle gangs, sailors.
But now, it's totally mainstream. Extensive piercing tongues, eyebrows, navels, nipples, even genitals and tattoos.
And even though it's mainstream, these practices often still have this sort of vaguely transgressive feel.
Yeah.
A slight sexualized undertone, Kimmel calls it, like an awareness of the body as an object of pleasure or desire.
It's a statement. And the numbers are huge. Millions of Americans tattooed, especially younger adults. Men and women pretty evenly split.
And the most common tattoo.
Mom, 1 in 4. But design and placement are often highly sexually charged, saying something about ourselves. Interestingly, more women than men say a tattoo makes them feel sexier.
Even Barbie's got tattoos now.
Totally stylin' tattoos, Barbie. But unlike Barbies, most tattoos are permanent, and regret is common. People want removal because of fashion changes, peer pressure, sheer stupidity. Maybe a relationship ended.
That person's name, tattoo. The #1 reason for removal.
And here's a gendered thing. Women seeking removal report more social stigma than men. They're way more likely to hide tattoos, face negative comments.
Suggesting societal support for women with tattoos may not be as strong as for men, which isn't terribly surprising, sadly.
Moving from external marks to, well, bigger changes. Cosmetic surgery, the ultimate transformation, maybe. The increase has been staggering.
Like 30 times more procedures in just 15 years, that's massive. Liposuction, eyelid surgery, huge spikes.
And while women are still the main consumers, the number of male patients has exploded. Over 10% of procedures now.
The president of the Plastic Surgeon Society noted men see it as a way to look and feel younger, especially to compete in the workplace.
Which brings up your earlier point, who's the surgery for?
Exactly. Kimmel suggests the traditional image of women as sexual objects has simply expanded. Everyone has become an object to be seen. But seen by whom?
For women, he argues, the answer is usually men. Beauty is valuable currency in the sexual marketplace. Women have historically traded on their physical appearance to attract a mate.
And ironically, studies show most male partners thought the surgery was unnecessary.
But it's not just women aiming to please men. For men having surgery, the answer is often also men.
Men are objects of the male gaze too, needing to appear big, strong, and virile in front of other men.
The extreme example being penile enlargement surgery. Thousands of men a year paying thousands of dollars. It lengthens the flaccid penis, but erect length differences are insignificant.
So why do it? It's often less about pleasing women and more about men's perception of other men. That locker room syndrome, fear of being judged inadequate by other men.
Guys talk about avoiding showers, even wearing shorts. Because of this fear, it's intense.
And women also undergo genital surgery, like tightening labia, to look like nubile 20-something centerfolds, or even hymenoplasty.
Reconstructing the hymen, once used maybe by parents whose daughters weren't virgins, now popular among young women to hide past experiences or give a new partner the thrill of being first.
A website ad. The ultimate gift for the man who has everything. It's something.
Kimmel's conclusion is stark. Nowhere is gender inequality better observed than in the motivations of both women and men in changing their bodies. It's the male gaze partner, rival, competitor, motivating these drastic measures for everyone.
And these standards cross borders. Eyelid surgery in Asia for a Western look is huge.
And that Chinese leg lengthening procedure, breaking legs, inserting pins, stretching over months, influenced by tall supermodels, it's extreme.
These transformations show how deep these gendered ideals run. But what happens when your internal sense of gender just doesn't match the body you were born with?
Right. This leads us to perhaps the most profound way bodies are shaped by gender. When someone feels their biological sex doesn't match their gender identity, radical transformations.
Kimmel positions this on a continuum. You have women in power suits challenging norms, transvestites playing with the sex-gender link.
Showing gender isn't just biology, it's performance, cultural dress.
Exactly. But for some, it's deeper. A persistent discomfort and sense of inappropriateness about one's assigned sex, feeling trapped in the wrong body. That's the core of transgenderism.
So they seek to change not just gender roles, but biological sex itself to match their felt identity.
Through therapy, hormone treatments to change secondary sex characteristics, and ultimately, sex reassignment surgery, SRS.
Which involves removing original genitalia, creating new ones. Historically rare, but medical advances and societal shifts, like Medicare recognition and more LGBTQ+ visibility, have made it more viable.
This discomfort often peaks at puberty. One female-to-male person described hating the changes, feeling depressed, even suicidal. While transgenderism isn't common, the implications for understanding gender are huge.
Traditionally, if there was a mismatch, the body was seen as the essential truth, and therapy aimed to help the person accept it.
But transgenderism, Kimmel argues, lets us dissolve what is experienced as an arbitrary privileging of the body at birth and to give more weight to who we feel we are. Moving towards a world where maybe we can freely choose our gender because we can freely change our sex.
That raises a big question, he poses. Are transgender people biological essentialists or consummate social constructionists?
It's a paradox, isn't it? By changing biology to match identity, they might seem to affirm the importance of biology. But by showing biology can be changed because of identity, they completely flip the script that identity must follow biology.
They really embody gender performance and the malleability of sex itself.
Which, of course, expands possibilities, but also fears about that kind of free-floating freedom. And this whole discussion sets the stage perfectly for looking at how gender shapes our most intimate lives, our sexuality.
So what does this all mean for our intimate lives? Kimmel argues that gender difference is nowhere more expressed than in our sexual relationships. And here's a fascinating twist he points out. As love and friendship became more feminized, resembling traditional female models of intimacy.
Sexuality itself became increasingly masculinized.
Right, this masculinization of sex, pursuing pleasure for its own sake, more focused on orgasm, more partners, experimentation, separating sex from love.
Part of that is technology, the pill, the internet. Part is the sexual revolution's promise of more freedom, fewer consequences.
And a lot of that revolution was rejecting the old Victorian double standard, that interplanetary theory of gender men and women as different species.
Michelet in 1881 saying women think, speak, act differently, their biology hinders digestion, sex is unhealthy for women, fine for men.
Doctors claiming most women are not much troubled with sexual feelings. Clearly, not based on talking to women.
Not at all. Even when Kinsey did his studies post-WWII, finding basically the same physical responses in men and women, he noted that expert advice in marriage manuals actually created many of the perceived differences.
Yeah, studies of old gynecology textbooks showed they asserted women couldn't orgasm during intercourse, counseling faking it to please husbands.
Unbelievable.
And the double standard, sadly, persists today. Maybe less in behavior, more in judgment. Men gain status, stud, women lose it. Slut.
Boys taught to pursue, girls taught to resist.
That quote from the man recalling the game was to get a girl to give out, expecting resistance. Part thrill, part conquest, part bragging rights.
And Billy Crystal's line, women need a reason to have sex, men just need a place. It captures that stereotype perfectly.
But this double standard isn't just different scripts, Kimmel argues. It's a product of gender inequality, of sexism. Assumptions that men are more sexual always escalate, women must control their feelings.
It turns sex into a contest, not connection. Catherine McKinnon calls sexuality the linchpin of gender inequality.
And women get raised believing sexual activity makes them bad girls, enforced by everyone. leading to sexual minimalism, few partners, less pleasure, waiting for Prince Charming.
These different scripts even lead to different definitions of sex. That study where couples were asked how often they made love.
Men reported higher numbers, not affairs, just different counting. Women counted encounters, men counted their orgasms.
Which reveals deeper stuff. Women have a broader definition. For men, focused on orgasm, often only intercourse counts. Oral, manual stimulation, foreplay for men, sex for women.
Men can't tally it unless intercourse happens, leading to technical virginity. Kimmel uses the Clinton impeachment example. No intercourse, no lie in that framework. It only counts if you put it in.
This phallocentric male sexuality, focus on the penis, means genitals are the key erogenous zone for men. They personify it willy, whopper, or objectify it as a tool.
Women rarely name their genitals, use euphemisms. You don't see women chatting with their labia.
Not typically, no. So when they think about sex, men and women often think differently. And men think about it more often, according to surveys.
And fantasy content differs dramatically. Men fantasize more during masturbation, use more explicit media.
Our research confirms this. Men's fantasies, often genitally focused, orgasm-centered, explicit sequences, often strangers, detailed physical attributes, vague settings.
Women's fantasies, detailed scenes, location, time, props like candles, wine, often present or past partners. Less explicit sexual description, more about mood, romance, lovemaking.
Kimmel concludes women's sexual imaginations are impoverished at the expense of highly developed sensual imaginations, and vice versa for men. And crucially, this holds for straight and gay individuals. It's gender, not orientation, driving the script.
And a big source for these mental images, especially for men, is pornography. Nearly all men report exposure, often their first sight of naked women.
And it's a political battleground. The right sees it as degrading. Radical feminists see it as misogyny, making sexism sexy.
That quote from the porn director is chilling. Wanting to get even with women, audiences cheering for brutality.
While empirical proof that porn causes violence is debated, some studies show attitude shifts after viewing violent porn. But the core reality is disturbing. Men masturbating to images of torture, rape, violence. Kimmel rightly says, violence is rarely sexualized for women. That such images can be such a routine and casual turn-on for many men should at least give us pause.
Given these different mental landscapes, it makes sense we develop different sexualities. Women often need emotional connection for sex to really work, as one woman put it. First experiences are more likely in relationships.
Which might explain why women are less likely to see one-night stands as degrading. Men are more likely to cheat, though that gap's closing and have more partners.
Oral sex is another area of difference. Women report less enthusiasm. That closer to Bloomingdale's than to the dentist line is telling.
But maybe it's about the gender of the actor, not just the act. Men often describe oral sex from a position of power giving or receiving. Women often perceive it from powerlessness, doing it to make a man happy.
These deep differences aren't accidental. They come from gendered socialization.
So where do these differences come from? Not just parents or media, mostly, Kimmel argues, from peers during adolescence, those awkward wrestling matches.
Teaching each other what feels good, practicing until it fits the script.
The boy's goal, score, escalating through bases, learn from friends. The girl's goal, pleasure, but also protecting her reputation, alluring but not easy.
They're in different time zones. He's planning the next move. She's wondering how to stop him without hurting his feelings. Neither fully present.
He's thinking about bragging rights. She's worried about her reputation. That separation, focused on same-sex peers, hinders intimacy.
And it explains pressure and miscommunication. Studies show more men engage in unwanted intercourse due to enticement or to gain experience, or, strikingly, to avoid appearing unmasculine or gay. Peer pressure is huge for them.
By adulthood, this distance solidifies. Think of Phoebe in Friends needing to clarify her gentle lover was still all man.
Or the lesbian character pitying heterosexuals. Women trying and failing to come, men trying and failing not to come.
She's got a point. Many men develop strategies to delay ejaculation, emotional distancing, objectification, Woody Allen thinking of baseball players.
Completely unaware of his partner. Or guys reciting multiplication tables.
And then chemical aids like numbing creams and condoms. Do men feel like better lovers when they feel less? It's a weird question.
And when sex goes wrong, men frame it in gender terms. Premature ejaculation means not a real man can't satisfy a woman. Erectile problems mean failure as a man.
Sexuality becomes about hydraulic functioning, not mutual pleasure. Workplace, sports, war metaphors, get the job done, performance anxiety. They're overconforming to these machine-like norms.
Which helps explain Viagra's massive success. Even if the problem is often psychological, erectile dysfunction, replacing impotence, linking erections to power, Viagra offers a magic bullet.
Men celebrated the machine being fixed. But it needs desire to work. It's not an aphrodisiac. And ironically, inhibited sexual desire, once called frigidity in women, is now the leading sexual problem for men. No pill for that.
But despite all these differences, things have been changing. The sexual gender gap has been closing, especially with women's sexuality becoming more masculinized.
Right. Partly technology, the pill, legal abortion, allowing women to separate sex from reproduction, pursue pleasure for its own sake, like men always could. That teen quote captures it. First reproduction, then love, now just feeling good.
And feminism played a huge role, making women's sexual pleasure and autonomy a political goal, exposing the myth of the vaginal orgasm. Women felt entitled to say yes, not just no.
Leading to big shifts. Virginity went from prized possession to maybe a burden, a problem to be solved.
Masturbation rates and motives became similar. Attitudes towards premarital sex converged, with women's views changing most dramatically.
And actual behaviors shifted. Teen boys' experience stayed pretty stable, but girls' rates of intercourse soared. Age of first intercourse dropped for both, more teens having multiple partners, especially girls.
But then came the backlash. Just say no campaigns, virginity pledges.
Fueled by STD/HIV fears. But studies showed pledges only delayed sex briefly, didn't work well in communities where they were common, and crucially,
Pledgers were less likely to use contraception when they did have sex. No reduction in STDs.
that profoundly confused ideas about what sex even meant under the pledge. Oral sex, okay. Anal sex, okay. Tongue kissing, not.
It's a mess. And interestingly, only boys' sexual activity rates seem to be declining. Maybe because, as Risman and Schwartz argue, girls have more power now to insist sex happens within relationships.
It suggests feminism, empowering girls for safer sex and intimacy, might dampen boys' behaviors, while abstinence-only programs without real sex ed could actually increase teen pregnancy. Complex stuff. And nowhere is this mix of convergence and inequality clearer than on college campuses.
Yeah, the campus hookup culture, the old dating game. Pretty much gone. Hooking up is the norm now.
And it's deliberately vague, right? A sexual encounter might include intercourse, might not, often just once, between strangers or acquaintances.
But it also covers repeat encounters, sex buddies, friends with benefits.
Campus dynamics often involve same-sex groups meeting opposite-sex groups at parties, bars, lots of alcohol usually involved. Hooking up can be anything from kissing to intercourse.
It reverses the old pattern. Less dating to find a mate, more mating to maybe find a date.
But big gender differences remain. Pleasure and purpose, the orgasm gap is huge. In recent hookups, way fewer women orgasm than men.
And men overestimate female pleasure dramatically.
Meaning men aren't perceptive or women are faking it, or both.
Women in interviews admit faking it to make the guy feel good or just to end it. That quote from Trish. No way it was going to happen, so I just faked it and he felt good and I felt relieved.
And while it's consensual, women usually have to do the negotiating about intimacy levels. The DTR, define the relationship talk, and often he decides.
This leads to backlash lamenting lost modesty, telling women to just say no if they want commitment.
But that ignores pleasure-seeking by everyone, assumes women are chaste, men are predators, insulting to both.
Kimmel's point. The problem isn't the sex, it's the gender inequality within the sex. Mutually negotiated, sober, careful contact can be great. The key is who gets to decide.
Which brings us to adult sexual lives, where we see similar patterns of convergence and lingering issues.
Right, this convergence isn't just on campus. Adult sexual lives are getting more similar too. Premarital sex rates, number of partners converging.
Surveys from the 70s onward showed more sexual activity and variety among married women, more satisfaction. Hyman's research found women, like men, aroused by explicit talk, not just romance. Interest in variety converging. Oral sex experiences way up for both.
That story of the college woman giving her boyfriend oral sex for his birthday just for kicks, no embarrassment, suggests shifting meanings. Women seem to be having more sex, enjoying it more.
Rubin's study showed a huge drop in women faking orgasm compared to the 70s, though maybe college data shows a slight uptick again now.
But differences persist. Sex still means different things, even if rules are looser. Losing virginity still carries more weight, maybe loss of value for women.
And that teen oral sex craze, look closer. Small increase in girls receiving, epic rise in girls giving.
So, girls servicing boys. Because guys' role in teen culture, girls face a dilemma. Hold out on intercourse, maybe perform oral sex just to be included, like a ticket for admission.
It's about gender inequality, not mutual pleasure.
And this entitlement extends to things like date and acquaintance rape, still skyrocketing on campuses. That attitude, I paid for the date, I'm entitled to sex.
Awful. And about 15% of college women report assault, mostly by a date. Some studies put it even higher. The focus should be on predatory behavior forcing women to change their lives.
Among adults generally, women report forced sex way more often than men. Men remain the principal sexual predators. A woman's lifetime risk of completed rape is about 1 in 5.
And here's that really interesting point again. Women gain sexual agency, but it's not matched by less male entitlement or more male intimacy. Therapists critique men's non-relational sex, detached, compulsive, isolated, linked to aggression, success achievement focused.
Brooks's centerfold syndrome. Voyeurism, objectification, sex as validation, trophyism, fear of intimacy. Levant's alexithymia, inability to feel or express feelings due to social conditioning.
Critics see harm to women, objectification, and men, limited intimacy. But others, like Good and Sherrod, see non-relational sex as maybe a developmental stage for men, leading to better intimacy later.
The idea of non-relational sex as a problem is recent, Kimmel notes, reflecting discomfort with the sexual revolution. Used to be too little sex was the problem, now maybe it's too much.
But is non-relational sex the only way men express themselves? Many men manage both. Maybe the goal should be enlarging everyone's repertoire, love, and lust, as long as it's mutual, safe, equal.
Which naturally leads to thinking about homosexual relationships. You might think they'd escape these gendered patterns, but Kimmel argues, not so much.
Right, he says gendered sexuality applies just as much, maybe more obviously, because you have masculinity or femininity multiplied by 2.
It challenges common sense, and some studies suggesting gay men are feminine, lesbians masculine, gender nonconformists.
Kimmel sees a deep logical flaw there. It prioritizes partners' gender over one's own gender identity and behavior. He argues sexual behavior, gay or straight, confirms gender identity.
He critiques that sissy boy study, too, finding effeminate boys more likely to have homosexual experiences.
But the behavior studied was extremely rare, can't explain most homosexuality, and tomboys showed no difference in outcome. Being a sissy is just a much bigger violation of gender norms.
So the evidence points the other way. Homosexuality is deeply gendered. Gay men and lesbians are true gender conformists.
Leading to alliances between gay writers, feminists, and even conservatives like George Gilder, who sees gay men as caricatures of male sexuality, promiscuous lust, and lesbians resembling other women, desiring intimacy, monogamy.
After Stonewall, gay men embraced hypermasculine codes, anonymous sex, leather, bodybuilding, the cologne look, trying to prove they weren't failed men.
Joe Jackson. All the gays are macho.
Lesbians' lives are different. Gay liberation wasn't always sexual liberation for them. Talk of tyranny of the relationship, lesbian bed death.
One woman suggested socialization makes women less initiative-driven, more fulfilled by cuddling, leading to relationships feeling almost incestuous, less sexual over time. Feminism also framed lesbianism politically, choosing not to support the enemy, man. Even that's gender conformity, a choice based on gender.
The quantitative data is compelling, too. Number of partners. Way fewer for lesbians than gay men.
Long-term relationships. Highest rates for lesbians, lowest for gay men. Lesbians emphasize emotional connection more.
Frequency of sex. Higher for gay men and straight couples initially, drops off faster and lower for lesbians over time. Almost half report sex less than monthly after 10 years.
But an interesting point on equality. Gay relationships are more egalitarian in sex initiation than straight couples.
Right.
And homosexuals tend to be more experimental, especially with non-penetrative sex. Longer lovemaking sessions, too.
Homophobia impacts everyone, though. Gay people face it constantly: access, guilt, identity, stigma, inhibiting relationships.
And for straight people, homophobia is the fear of being seen as unmanly, effeminate, gay.
Many straight men have sex partly to prove they aren't gay, leading to compensatory behaviors, exaggerated gender stereotypes.
Which leads Kimmel to ask, does heterosexuality as currently practiced require homophobia? To reinforce gender, keep men hypermasculine, women ultra-feminine.
It's a provocative thought. Clearly gender is huge in sexuality, but it's not the only factor, right?
No, definitely not. Life is complex. Cultural variations matter hugely. Mead found cultures where spontaneous sex is discouraged for everyone. Malinowski found Trobriand islanders where women initiate as often as men. avoid missionary position.
In the U.S., demographics play a role too. Class affects sexual sophistication, foreplay emphasis.
Race and ethnicity show variations in attitudes, number of partners, specific practices like masturbation or oral sex. Globally, satisfaction, importance of sex, perceived ability, huge regional differences.
And of course, age and life stage. Physiology changes, but so do relationships, family duties. Lillian Rubin's point about daily hassles.
And kids, the greatest in aphrodisiacs, less time, freedom, privacy, interest for couples with children.
What about those sexual peaks? Women late 30s, men teens, often blamed on biology.
Kimmel questions that. Maybe it's about the relationship between men's and women's sexualities. Men shifting towards sensual as women become more explicitly sexual. Could it be marriage domesticating sex, bringing it into the woman's domain, the home?
So when sex feels less risky for men, less exciting, they soften. When it feels less risky for women, less threatening, they explore pleasure more. It's about the social setup of marriage, not just biology.
Plausible. Marriage has become more sexualized over time, linking love and eroticism. Compatibility matters more now. And here's a startling conclusion Kimmel reaches. Politics affects sex.
Gender politics, specifically. The more equal men and women are, the more satisfied both are with their sex lives.
That cross-national survey is fascinating. Countries with higher gender equality, Spain, Canada, Belgium, report happier sex lives than less equal countries like Japan. Where procreation is prioritized, women's pleasure is often discounted.
And even within countries, more equality means happier sex lives.
And the clincher, the couples with the highest marital satisfaction and sexual activity, those where men do the most housework and childcare.
Housework makes her horny, makes sense, more time, energy for her, less resenting, opportunity and motive.
So equality is sexier than inequality. Quite an incentive.
It really is. And it's startling how personal health is also profoundly gendered. HIV brings this into sharp focus. The epidemic changed gay male patterns, fewer partners, safer sex, more couples.
Though safe sex initially felt like feminizing sexuality to some men, an attack on sexual freedom. What's sexy felt opposite to what's safe. But gay groups successfully promoted safe sex within a masculine framework.
Globally, though, the picture is different. HIV epicenter shifted. Sub-Saharan Africa, Asia, Latin America. And in the developing world, rates are roughly equal between men and women. In Africa, women are nearly 60% of cases. Teen girls outnumber boys 5 to 1 among infected.
Why? Largely women's lower status powerlessness to resist sex, insist on condoms, get health care. Mozambique's prime minister said it. Break the silence on gender inequality driving the epidemic. Empowering women is key to reducing HIV.
But that gender symmetry isn't true here in the U.S., Western Europe, Australia. Here, AIDS remains highly gendered.
Right. Women are less than 25% of cases in North America, Europe, only 7% in Australia and Z, where women's status is highest.
So while women are more likely to get HIV from unprotected straight sex, most U.S. patients are men. Higher rates among young black men show class race factors too.
Kimmel argues AIDS might be the most highly gendered disease in American history. Masculinity itself, risk-taking, irresponsibility, sex above all acts as a risk factor, like in drunk driving.
And general health patterns show this too. Historically, men took more risks, drinking, drugs, saw healthcare as unmasculine. Women took better care, saw doctors more. Women get sicker, men die quicker.
Courtney explains the correctly gendered man is unconcerned with health, sees himself as strong, independent, fearless, risk-taking. Race and class compound this. Black men have lower longevity, higher stress lifestyle diseases.
That Kellogg report, a black male fated to an unhealthy life a white man can only imagine. An ethic of toughness makes it hard to admit pain or seek help.
But here, too, signs of convergence. More women taking risks, binge drinking, fighting, smoking, seen as signs of power. Ehrenreich warned, equality shouldn't just mean being as stupid and self-destructive as men.
And more men seeking care, traditionally women's domain. Health campaigns, including men, show interests are complementary. Gender inequality is bad for everyone's health.
Predictably, backlash claims women's gains hurt men, citing the lifespan gap.
Critics say men are underserved in research budgets, framing it as zero-sum.
But what about globally? That mortality gap is reversed in the global south. Men outlive women due to profound gender inequality in access to care, nutrition, reproductive control. Amartya Sen's 100 million missing women.
In the U.S., leading causes of male death are lifestyle-related. The enemy isn't feminism, Kimmel argues, but an ideology of masculinity, encouraging living fast, dying young, plus government indifference.
As usual, the solution proposed is more gender equality, not less. Health isn't zero-sum.
What a journey through this chapter. How deeply gender gets inscribed onto our bodies. Beauty ideals, sex, health, from the beauty myth to hookup culture to how homosexuality conforms to gender. Our bodies are truly social texts.
We've seen the male gaze affecting everyone's body choices, how feminism and other factors masculinized women's sexuality, closing gaps, yet inequality still fuels problems like the orgasm gap and forced sex, and that undeniable link between gender equality and well-being, satisfaction, health.
So the final thought for you, the listener. If equality really makes us happier, healthier, even more sexually satisfied, what unspoken fears, what ingrained beliefs are still holding us back from fully embracing it everywhere in our lives? Maybe it's time to look at the social texts of bodies all around us with a fresh perspective.